When you're building a startup, choosing the most optimal time to work is super important. This is one of the reasons why I actually work late at night. So often I'll start the day, probably 10 o'clock, I'll turn up to the office, and my days will be generally filled with lots of meetings. There'll either be phone calls, Zoom calls, in-person meetings, or even going out to customer sites or meeting with some investors. And it's really, really busy throughout the day. It gets to 5, 6 o'clock, start to wrap up my day. By 7 o'clock, I'm home. And I spend some time with the family. Usually by 10 o'clock, everyone goes to sleep. And I use this time to have my quiet time, but my quiet time to think about what's happening inside of the business and what are the strategic things that I want to work on. Often I'll come back to the office, no one's around. The office is obviously super quiet. And it gives me the time to really focus and think about strategic things that I want to work on. And this is why I work late at night. I find it sort of the ability to actually put really meaningful work in at this time period is really, really valuable, and it's what actually takes the business to the next level. When you're having that quiet time, you can think strategically, you can come up with creative marketing ideas. You can also look at the business through a different lens where you're not rushed and you're not having to push through to that next meeting and go from one meeting to the next meeting to the next meeting. I don't do it every night, but I do it a number of nights throughout the week, and I find that since I've started doing it, it's made a huge difference to the way in which the business operates. I'll go to sleep, usually later at night, sometimes 1, sometimes 2 o'clock, but I don't necessarily get up early. So if you're trying to call me early in the morning, you generally won't get hold of me. And I've just found that this whole process I've found really works for me. For other people, what they find is getting up early. A lot of entrepreneurs that I know might get up at 4, 5 a.m. in the morning, and this works for them, but it's around finding what works for you. And for me, it's the late nights, but for others, it might be early mornings. And others might not need to do that. And I think as an entrepreneur, it's finding what works for you, but also making sure you get that time where no one's around you, where you actually get to think about, is this direction your business is heading is in the right direction? Or, if you've got a problem to solve, having that quiet time to actually be able to solve that problem. Those quiet moments are super valuable, and I really recommend it for anyone running a business.